resilience comes from challenge. It's a practice, right? It can be a practice that requires you to go through some stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? In order to get there.
Cause of noise, hear rewind, breathe it in. Your permission to reflect and reset begins. Dr. Sarah, the mind is high. Brian gets the heart just right. Lena, the coach to ignite. Oh, cause of noise, reflect and reset. Cause of noise, reflect and reset. Your time, your space, your life, your best. Cause of noise, reflect and reset.
Hey y'all. Hey y'all. Okay, here we go.
Your permission to reflect and reset.
Definitely keeping that. And that is a great way to start the show. And that is what the day has felt like. Dr. Sarah, Lena, and Brian Stokes here with Pause the Noise, where we give you permission to reflect and reset. Today, we're talking about resilience because y'all need to talk about a bounce back, okay? Some of us have a hard time doing it. Some of us probably don't even know what it is. But here we are. Dr. Sarah, help us out.
Awesome. So, the reason we decided to do resilience is that in a conversation we had around life transitions, I really brought up what makes a life transition, I wouldn't say easier to go through, but what is the factor that really brings us through. And for me, it's always been my resilience, right? And I know that that tends to be a factor in how people tend to get through transitions. And when I reflect on my own life and all of the hard things that I've ever had to go through, I am certain that there's a level of hardiness, a level of emotional intelligence, and when you break it down, resilience, that I've had to have mental fortitude in order to get through really hard things in life. I can think about moving to the United States, working through traumas in my own personal life, working through things like graduate school, homelessness at one point in life. All of these things required me to have an internal mindset that you've done hard things before, and this is not going to be the hardest thing you have to do ever in life, so you can get through. And when we look at the research, because I actually did a little bit of research on this in graduate school, we see that things like emotional intelligence and hardiness actually are more predictive of success in life than even things like our IQ level. And so we find that even with folks with high IQs, if they don't have the emotional fortitude to kind of get through hard things, it can be hard to be successful in life because when you are attempting to overcome things that require longevity or things that require you to bounce back, it's not how smart you are that's going to get you through that. It's going to be your ability to regulate your emotions, your ability to see past the current moment, your ability to not be impulsive. These are the things that tend to bring us through. And that's according to my lived experience, and it's also according to research. And so today I thought that we would talk about how resilience has helped us through different things in life and what tools we can provide folks to build resilience, because resilience can be this innate thing. We see that emotional intelligence tends to be something that is innate in folks, but there are still practices that we can engage in to bolster the fortitude, the mental fortitude that we have, bolster the level of resilience that we have. And so when I think about my own life and the things that I've gone through, what can I say? What can I say here about the noise and how I push through that? Hmm. I can think about times, particularly the traumas that I've gone through in my life and in childhood. There was a lot of struggle with people pleasing, with
Mhm.
fear of how others were going to feel if I didn't do things the right way. And that particular struggle creates a lot of self-doubt, has created a lot of self-doubt for me in my life. If I do something, how are other people going to feel about it? Is it going to make anyone upset? Is it going to rub someone the wrong way? And when I think about how resilience has helped me with that, I have had to really be mindful of the anxiety that that brings up for me. I have to have an internal system within myself to say, "Oh, you're getting anxious again. You're starting to really focus in on what other people are going to think versus how you're going to get through this." And truly, I've had to notice that discomfort and say, even though this is really, really uncomfortable right now, I'm literally just going to keep going. There's the old adage, fake it till you make it. I always tell my clients, you got to face it till you make it. And that's the
Mm,
real way,
mm,
because you can feel one way on the inside and just keep going, right? And keep pushing forward. And that's really the level of resilience that it requires to get through things like graduate school, to become financially independent, to get through things like divorce. It requires that. And so that's my piece on the noise. And the pause there is really, how do I build resilience in my life? How do I build up the tools for resilience? How can I know my own resilience to push me through the hard things so I can get to where I want to get and to achieve the goals that I want to achieve in life, or just work through transitions in a way that feels slightly less friction?
hmm,
Yeah, when I think of resilience, the one thing I love about resilience is we all have the ability to build it, right? It's not necessarily something that we're all born with. Some people have it more than others, but I think about years and years ago when I would say that my resilience level was quite low, quite low, and I literally would just go into these mental overloads, overthinking. I would take myself into these panic attacks. I mean, I think back to my late 20s, and I just didn't understand, and I didn't have the discipline to build my resilience. And so everything felt like a crisis in my life. Everything felt
mm,
heavy. It lasted longer than it needs to. I catastrophized everything. And so, what I love about resilience and having been in that other space, and now where I am today, where people often say, like, do I ever get stressed about anything? I do, but I've built such a high level of resilience in my life that it takes a whole lot to like really shake me. And so I think what I would want people to know, number one, is that you can build your resilience. And so if you feel like, man, I'm not very resilient, the good news is that we all can get to a different or higher level of resilience. And the more you build it, I think the beauty is that you get to see how you start navigating difficult situations with a lot more ease and a lot more grace. It doesn't make it easy, but your emotional and mental state is more conducive to navigating it a lot easier, I would say, right? And so for me, that's been my experience in life. I've really learned by, like you said, Dr. Sarah said, it's you're managing your emotions. It's also for me, I think a big part for me is mindset. And with experience, with faith, you kind of learn that this moment is temporary. That has been like one of the biggest lifelines for me. Like, this feels awful in this moment, but it's not going to last forever. And that has helped me to kind of shape my mindset in such a way that, okay, how do I just get through this moment? And sometimes you literally have to take things moment by moment. And I think a lot of times we're trying to, what is this going to look like, in a month from now? Where resilience says sometimes, based on how heavy or how big this thing is, let me just deal with it moment by moment and then celebrate those spaces where you've been able to get through it. And I think celebration is a big piece of how you build your resilience as well. I'm like, woo, didn't think I was going to get through that, but I did. Go me, right? So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, when I think of resilience, I think of course, strength, but I also think of that pain that it takes to build that strength to be resilient. I feel like I had to pick myself up out of a lot of things alone to become, resilient. So in the end, it's like, okay, yes, I did it. But when I reflect on it, it's like, oh, I had to go through a lot to get through this point, whether we're talking about childhood. Oh, I was greased up today like my mama did it. Okay. Like when I think about childhood and I think about, my relationship like with my dad, like he had his own struggles. And as a child, I had to navigate how to blend into the walls at certain points. And then, like, okay, what can I come in and say now to, make the puzzle fit like with the family and that. And then, like, again, this is people pleasing, Dr. Sarah, how you were saying. And then coming out of that, like into adulthood, it was like, the same thing of more like people pleasing, but then I would find myself in places where I'm getting like the short end of the stick, and then I become irritated about it. Then I feel like I'm a failure because I'm like, wait, I gave and I was kind to all these people. How did I get left with nothing? And then having to come back out of that and like, okay, I made it on the other side, but it was so many things in between that I did not want to do that I did for the betterment of other people because of what started in childhood, but that is what built that resilience to learn later. So I feel like I had to go through a whole bunch to actually get to the point of like, whew, okay, I made it in this area. I get to take care of my family. My children will never feel that and all those good things. But it's just like when I reflect on it, it's just like that it took a lot, just to get there to feel
Hmm.
it. So what I'm wondering today, Dr. Sarah, I'm like, what are tools that, people who, because we've all been through things, but what can we what are small things we can do to kind of like, build that muscle so it doesn't take being, thrown away in the garbage to the trash, like, okay, I gotta get up. I got it out the mud. I got, it's just like, step by step, let me get myself together so that, I don't have to, carry these large burdens to learn a lesson. Because one thing I am huge on now, if I see that somebody has learned a lesson from something, I'm like, okay, got it. I don't need to go through it. I see what happened there and I don't want to try it. All good.
Hmm. Well, I think you said something really important, Brian, that you had to go through a lot to get to that resilience. When we think of something like resilience, it sounds really good. It sounds like this just amazing thing. But the truth is that resilience comes from struggle. Resilience comes from challenge. It's a practice, right? It can be a practice that requires you to go through some stuff,
Hmm.
right? In order to get there. People who aren't necessarily having to go through a lot of trauma to get to resilience, we think of people like athletes, right? But that requires you to have to try something over and over and over and fail 100 times before you're good at it in order to succeed. And so it requires failure. It requires discomfort. It requires overcoming, right? That's literally the point. My husband sometimes jokes around. He's like, "Girl, you could have gotten through the Holocaust. You could have gotten through anything in life because
Jesus.
you have just like that. I'm going to get through whatever the hell is thrown at me, right? I'm just going to get through it kind of energy." But that has come too from a lot of challenges, right? From a lot of small moments in life that were really, really hard, and I was just like, well, I'm just going to get through it. Like, there's no other option. Right. And literally just having that conviction that there is no other option and learning that, teaching that to our kids requires us as parents to allow them to struggle, allowing them to fail, allowing them to experience discomfort. Particularly millennials, we had parents who we were latchkey kids, right? We had parents who had to work really long hours. We had parents who didn't necessarily, and even Gen X, they had parents that, you all had parents that didn't necessarily have a lot of emotional intelligence. We didn't have therapy. We didn't have the internet telling us about how our feelings were valid. They didn't have any
Mm.
of that, right? And so, because we had the therapy, we had the internet telling us that our feelings were valid, we had the benefit of being able to learn all of these things. And now that we have children, we as a generation tend to be reluctant to have them struggle in any way or feel any kind of pain or discomfort. And because of that, we see that a lot of kids these days, they don't have patience, right? They tend to be a little bit more impulsive. They want things very quickly. They struggle a little bit more with that emotional intelligence. They struggle a little bit more with going through hard things. And so for us as parents, we have to remember, hey, even though that stuff hurt, there were definitely cons to it. We're not going to say that, right? But there were a lot of pros that came from it. This resilience came from it. And so allowing our children to fail and being there for support, but also being there, like Lena said, to celebrate the wins, right? Because we also didn't learn to celebrate our wins. We were definitely, getting through it, but we weren't taught to celebrate after, right? This is going to really set them up for success, I believe.
Yeah.
Lena, with you, and I feel like I'm always coming for you and your child because I'm amazed. Just if y'all don't remember last episode, Lena was going through a divorce when her child was not even one. So when Dr. Sarah's talking about, letting your child fail and that bringing resilience and all of that, I would think that you were really like Mama Bear times 10, being independent with her. What comes up in your mind about resilience and your child and wanting her, to do well, but also wanting to protect?
So yeah, funny you should ask because I kind of struggled with initially helping my daughter to build resilience. um I remember just a moment in parenting, and I think she may have been about, I want to say maybe 11 or 12, and I just had this epiphany that I could not protect her from everything. Because I mean, I don't think her being an only child helps that either. Um, but I just remember, like, I want to solve all her problems. I want to make everything better for her. If something happens and it's difficult, okay, how can I make this easier for her? And then I just remember thinking, I can't do this for her if I want her to build resilience, if I wanted to really understand what mental fortitude is about, how to be a great problem solver and a critical thinker. And so, probably around 13 or 14, I started teaching her about emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
When I worked at the bank, it was one of those topics that I presented to leaders a lot. And so, it was very easy for me to sit at the dinner table with her and try to break it down to her level. And she said this the other day. So she's 18 now, and she said to me, she's like, "Mom, people are not critical thinkers at my age." And she said, they don't know how to manage their emotions. And I'm thinking, in that moment, I was so grateful that I was able to teach her that. But I got to tell you, like, my initial lean was like, how can I protect her from everything evil, everything hard, everything difficult? And I think a lot of parents want that. They want, like, we don't want our kids to go through what we went through. And I think we oftentimes do everything we can to make life so much easier for them. And I think in a lot of ways, I am a firm believer that we should give our kids an advantage from what we have. But I also think we have a responsibility to make sure that we help them to build their resilience and to help them to be critical thinkers and solvers. And there is a fine line of balance that you have to do with that, but I think it's absolutely necessary. And so that's my honest answer, Brian. I initially was heading down the wrong path with that, but I caught myself very quickly.
Okay.
What about you,
Teaching.
Brian? How are you
Teaching.
teaching your kids?
Listen, I don't know if I am. Let me just be real. I have all girls. And I feel like one thing, mine are all under 6, but I feel like my kids, talking about my kids. I feel like one thing I'm letting them do is be bored And that is hard for me,
Mhm.
because I'm just like, I feel like they should be entertained all the time. And if you're not happy and you're crying about something, let me fix it. But one thing I'm learning is let them be bored, let them figure it out. We went outside the other day and they were like, we want the bounce house blown up. I said, the bounce house is not working today. So let's figure it out. Are we going to get in these trees? Are we going to dig in the dirt? Are we going to do water play? What are we going to do? And there were things outside. And for 90 minutes, they figured it out. And that was my way of saying, okay, they can work it out. Y'all have each other. It is three of you. Figure it out. And they did. Um, in this there was an incident at the school. My oldest daughter is 6, and I hear people online saying, oh, if my child says that they need me, I'll come, and if they don't, then I won't. But for me, maybe that's later in life, because if I hear anything about my child, I'm going into the school. We're gonna figure it out, at this age. And there had been like a bullying incident, and it happened 4 times. And I was like, well, baby girl, how come you didn't say anything? She goes, well, I learned just to ignore people who are saying things. And I asked her, what the little boy had said. And I said, oh, no, baby, completely inappropriate. I'm on the phone, with the teacher, and everything, got figured out. But even like with that, I asked her after, I'm like, why didn't you say anything? She's saying because she ignored it. I'm like, did it hurt your feelings? Because I think it was something specific about her hair. My daughter is black, so it's gonna, braids or whatever, questions, whatever. And she goes, no, because she said something was along with, no, because I like me, like I'm me. And I was just like, hell yeah. Like, yeah. But because I'm just like, okay, I'm instilling like something in you. And even though it hurts, because if I feel like her feelings are hurt in any type of way, it boils, because I'm just like, I just want you to be protected. I want you to feel loved and covered at all times. But like Lena was saying, you can't do that. And I hate that. But I'm just like, at least you love yourself. At least you like who you are. And at least you're not affected by something that somebody said. And I had to also take the fact that I'm like, oh, maybe when I was at that age, I didn't have that with what she has, like the support. So I would have took it differently, internalized it, and tried to make it to something else. But to her, it was just like, that's nothing to me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that
Yeah.
is beautiful. I
I
think
go ahead, Dr. Sarah.
I was just gonna say that I think a theme is coming up here, right? That when we see our kids going through things, that it makes us feel good to help them in that moment. And I think something that's important to remember is that when we when we step in, when our child has an opportunity to learn and grow from a situation, and we step in, that we take that opportunity away from them. And that same feeling we have in solving that problem, the way we feel good about it, we're taking the opportunity for them to feel good about it away from them.
Mm,
Right? And so that's something that's really important to remember. It's not just about us feeling good that we were resilient for them in that moment, right?
mhm.
We're trying to teach them how to have that same feeling whenever that comes up for them. And so when you have that urge and you know that it's going to feel good, remember this is going to feel good for them too if they can do it on their own.
And they get to keep that tool. You're absolutely right.
Mm.
And I feel like it can feel different for different people, because for me, I'm like, well, just based off my background in childhood, I'm just like, I always want to, protect. So it's learning how to balance a time for them to stick up for themselves and to say things, whatever, or when it is time for me to step in. And I'm learning how to balance. And I feel like a lot of people can, just connect with that, because a lot of us weren't protected emotionally, younger. So when you have children, you're just like, certain things I do not want them to go through, certain things I do not feel like they should hear or should have to encounter. But some things, okay, this is uncomfortable. However, I do feel like you can handle this. And again, Dr. Sarah, back to what you were saying, letting them go through it, letting them have that tool. Because in my life right now, how old am I? 36, 37, 37 next month. In my life, 36 years old, I'm finally happy with, if certain people are not around, okay, whatever. If I'm not invited, okay, whatever. It's just like a feeling of feeling free and feeling secure, in that. But like we talked about in the beginning, it took a lot of things to go through to get that. And if we can figure out a healthier way for our children to build that resilience. Not that it has to be something so traumatic like the things that we've been through, but yeah, that is good. Like Lena, when you were saying you were teaching emotional intelligence at 13, I'm like, yeah, let's teach the tools. And when we have to use them, we can. So it's not like such a traumatic experience that, later on it's like, okay, you have PTSD, but it's like it's a healthy way, to do it. And that's another thing, just in my head, because I'm just like, it was so heavy, within the childhood. It's just like trying to, like, it's completely different. Brian, you were raised in the projects. Your kids are in the suburbs. Like, chill out. It's different. It's not the same. So relax. Protect them. Yes. You're raising Black women. I'm in Florida. Yes. But however, it is not the exact same thing that you were going through. So balance it out. And I'm talking to all the men out there with any type of child, because like you just want to protect.
Yeah. I think that's so good, Brian. I think what came up for me as you were talking that I remember having to walk my daughter through is, and this applies to some adults as well. When we hear resilience, a lot of times we think, oh, resilience equals strength. And it does. But resilience does not mean that you suppress your emotions, right? Resilience means that you also have the courage to face your emotions and to really acknowledge them, to name them, and then to process them. And I think there was this period where, as I was trying to teach my daughter how to navigate difficult situations, I think she interpreted that to mean, oh, then I don't need to show my emotions because that means I'm
Hmm.
not strong, right? She, of course, she was developing her understanding of it. And I remember we had to have this conversation around you still need, it's okay to express your emotions. That doesn't mean that you're weak. You're still resilient. And so I think one of the things I want our listeners to take away too is that suppressing your emotions doesn't help you build resilience. That just helps you cope in a very unhealthy way. But really being able to regulate your emotions through that difficult, which is not easy. It's not easy to build resilience. But I think some people think, oh, I'm resilient because I got through that and I didn't even deal with my emotions, right? You're just owning the
Mm.
issue with other things. And when I think about my daughter at 13 and I think about her now at 18, she even said to me the other day, she's like, Mom, like I could see how I cry more and I express myself more. And even movies moved me more because she was going down this path where she felt like my strength meant I had to suppress my emotions. And I don't know as her mom that I modeled that well for her, quite frankly, because I am just because I have had to build resilience, I think in a lot of ways I shielded her from her seeing me in an emotional state, which I don't think is healthy because I don't think she never saw her mom cry, almost never. And I've gone through some hard things with her, as you know. And so I think even resilience is being vulnerable enough to allow your kids to see when you are hurting and when you are in pain and when life is just not really kind right now, but we're going to get through it. And they watch you get through it on the other side.
Yeah, modeling that for sure. Absolutely. I love that. So if we think about some tangible tools for building resilience, I would say, as has come up in this conversation, that engaging in mindful practice is probably the most important because that's going to build that awareness for impulsive, like learning impulsive nature and building the awareness of what mindset you have. Like, what's the conspiracy theorist in your head saying to you at any given moment, right? And so things that folks can do, meditation is great for this, right? Whether you're meditating through sitting in silent practice, exercise, running, prayer is really good for this as well. Anything that slows the mind and allows you to turn in and notice. Any practice that allows you to slow down, turn in, and notice. And again, this is a practice. This is something that takes time to build, but definitely can get built over time. We see through research that the neurobiology within your brain changes when you engage in things like a meditative practice, like prayer, things that slow down the mind and allow you to notice what's going on in my brain. what are the patterns of my thought process? Then we begin to realize things like I tend to catastrophize. I tend to think in black and white terms. I tend to overarch on what other people are feeling versus myself. These are things that take time, but a daily practice can definitely help with that. Once you understand that and have that awareness of your mindset, then you can go into the process of thinking, what are some more adaptable ways for me to think about different situations? So if you're the type of person, I'll speak about myself. I'm the type of person, I'm a catastrophizer like Lena. Or no, like Brian, like I think Brian was saying that.
100%.
I'm the type of person that thinks of the worst case scenario. And so when I'm there, I've built up enough of a mindful practice to say, okay, you're freaking out. You're starting to think of the worst case scenario. What's the likelihood that this worst case scenario is going to happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I can stop, have that and be like, probably very low. What's more likely to happen? And I can write out, okay, what are all of the different scenarios? Do you have the ability to get through any of these more likely scenarios? Yes. Can you even get through the worst case scenario? Like, are you going to die? Probably not. Right. And so these are some good practices that can help with resilience.
Love it. So meditation, exercise, journaling. I would also add the people that you have around you and understanding that that is so vital, because if they are for you, they are for you. If they are not, they're not. And it's okay to let that go, because you do want your close personal space to be with people who are for you, who will hold you up, who will walk through life with you, not just who will walk through life when you're up. You don't want to leech. You want somebody, you know, that reciprocity in that space. But that is the time that we have today for Pause the Noise. Thank you for all that you brought today. This was an excellent conversation. Should I end with hey y'all or bye y'all, how we started this episode? And we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.